Welcome to Women in Leadership Talk, where you'll hear from successful women who are empowering other women with their stories of adversity, resiliency, and success. And here is your host, Vicki Bradley, founder and CEO of Women in Leadership Empowered.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Thanks so much for chiming in today. We know you have a busy schedule, and so we're grateful that you continue to listen in to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. I've got a wonderful guest calling in from Seattle today, Sonia Vora. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming in coming on and joining us today.
Thank you so much, Vicki. It is a delight to be here, and thank you for this podcast. I am a big fan, and I'm honored to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's important to us to have more voices represented and shared with the world. It's funny, Sonia, when I started this podcast, it was really about if one person takes something from this conversation, then we've done our jobs, right? And
Absolutely.
So for me, it's important to continue to showcase great stories and people's backgrounds and what they're doing. And, hopefully our audience keeps listening. We're being listened to in about 55 countries now, I think.
Incredible.
So we're getting the voices out there, which is awesome. So thank you. And let me take a moment. I'm going to give the audience a little bit of history on you so they know why I invited you to join today. So Sonia is a sought after speaker at prestigious platforms that include TEDx, Wed Summit, conference boards, universities around the world, and leading professional associations such as Global Corporate Affairs Chiefs and Society for Human Resource Management. Sonia's focus is about how to transform organizations and how they navigate change and unlock human potential. So this conversation couldn't be more timely because we're all navigating a lot of change.
Mm-hmm.
She also served as the CHRO of the Gates Foundation, where she led talent and people strategies supporting employees around the world. She now brings her strategic vision to today's most pressing wellness challenges as Chief Strategy Officer at BRYTR, where she leverages her extensive experience in global health systems to develop accessible science-backed nutritional psychiatry solutions addressing the nutritional mental health connection. Wow. Okay. So there's so many things for us to talk about today. And you have personally experienced and tapped into so many initiatives that are really, I would say, at the forefront of where we are in the world. So thank you for doing that. And maybe let's just start out, Sonia, by, sharing your journey. Like what has led you to where you are today?
Well, thank you for the question. I was born in the United States as the daughter of immigrants from India. And I remember I was growing up in Michigan in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and there weren't as many brown people there. And so you cut either side of the spectrum, like, oh, you're so tan, were you just in Florida? Or, oh, your skin's kind of dirty, what's that all about? And it was, I didn't have the words for it, but later I realized it's the feeling of being othered, of not fitting in, and you're not quite sure why. And that went through high school, where I was born with an Indian name. It's a beautiful name. It's Sonal. It's now my middle name because nobody could pronounce it. And, when you're 13 years old and you're sitting in class and your teacher is asking loudly, how do I pronounce this name? It's not feeling seen in a good way. And so I learned to be really observant of those around me. Who was feeling comfortable? Who was speaking up? Who was being quiet? And that led to much of my work unintentionally. I didn't realize it, was being hyper aware of my environment, of what seems to work in this environment, what doesn't work, who's fitting in, who's standing out, and why. And when I finally landed in human resources and that became my job, I had developed a tremendous amount of empathy for those who didn't feel like they were totally understanding how the dynamics around them worked. And they began shrinking or getting smaller or changing who they were. And at the same time, I worked for organizations that had purposes and missions and goals. And so right at that intersection of people and purpose is where I realized I have found my calling, which is really great. It took me a long time to get here, but I've realized a lot of my career has been how do I help people be their individual selves fully, authentically, and completely? And how do I help organizations maximize what they're here to accomplish?
Nice. Wow. I love that. I love that. And that is definitely a skill because often we are so busy in our own minds and so busy with our own things, and we get on autopilot that we sadly don't hear or see how others may be taking in information. So good for you for developing that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was hard won, I will say, and it's a journey. You're never quite there, but it's been fascinating.
Love it, love it, love it. It's funny. I was on a call with a group of women earlier, and we had a mastermind session, and we were talking about leadership presence. And one of the main takeaways from that was how often they feel invisible, and how to help them become more visible in different situations, whether it's work or personally. So what you're describing is, I think it's very prominent in organizations in our world, and there's so much noise. It's hard sometimes to be quiet enough to observe, but also to recognize how to stand out in a noisy world.
Absolutely. Yes. I think that I'll say about this, about women in particular, we get a lot of feedback at work. I'm sure I specifically talk about work, but we get it all over the place about who we are, not about our performance and about our behaviors or actions. We get that too. But often we're told that we ourselves are too much or not enough or too loud or too quiet. And after 10 years of trying to fit into whatever someone, not always bad managers, sometimes our own mentors and our own, or those who came in front of us and said, in this meeting, you better just not talk too much. But then the next meeting, you're told, why didn't you say anything? Because you got to get your voice out. You're like, I don't know anymore. So I'm just going to put my head down and, play it safe and go step by step. But you don't realize that you're doing that. You're just internalizing everything that you somehow are not enough. And it does take sometimes somebody to help you identify that, to help you reframe that, and to say, it's not you, it's a thing that you can now do something about. You are not broken. The room may not be right. That's okay. You can step into it more fully. And often, if you can be that for someone else, like you were saying in the beginning, if you can help just one person, that's everything.
100%, 100%. And that might be the only person who needed to hear it, right?
That's right.
And the impact on that can have such a ripple effect on that person, their lives, those they come in contact with. So I guess the point is, don't underestimate what that impact can actually
absolutely
have and do. Yeah. So let's talk about your work with championing, innovation and those innovative approaches. I know you've done a lot on navigating workplace, and one of the things I was really curious with us talking about was there's this divide. Do we go back to work? Do we work hybrid?
Oh, yes.
Remote work? And you have some people literally putting the stake in the ground that, nope, everybody has to be back in the office. And I think a lot of our employees are pushing back on that, saying, why? Like, we proved during COVID, we can work from home and be equally, if not more productive in some cases, and be happier. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And what is the impact on productivity and employee satisfaction?
Oh, such a powerful question. I think there are a couple of streams to explore that I've observed. One is economic for the individual. One is human energy and the connection to innovation. One is generational, and I'm sure there's more, but just looking at those three, starting with the third one, I mean, the chiefs and seniors and CEOs are baby boomers, Gen X, maybe elder millennials, but certainly I'm Gen X and higher. Our expectation was to be in the office every day. There was work and there was home, And the commute was the bridge between the two, where you unwound or geared up so that when you were home or in the office, you were ready. I think it was with the advent of, well, maybe beepers, but like certainly smartphones, where you could get your work calls on them and suddenly you were available. I used to call it the electronic leash, that I was never off because somebody could always reach me. The second, when we think about generational differences, obviously, is that younger folks, the Gen Zs and younger, they are very adept at building thriving communities solely online. So for them, it's not weird to have healthy, productive, innovative relationships where they don't meet the people, that there's in the sort of the one-to-many or the group situation. So I think that's a component that we're struggling with. The second, when I think of human energy and innovation, I do think there's this, at least American idea of the inventor in their garage or in their basement coming up with the light bulb or their personal computer, just the individual genius. I won't call it a myth because there's one or two examples, but far, far more likely are there people together and they're bouncing ideas off of each other. And it's not just an online call, it's human energy connects people. And that you're feeling it when you know it. You know, if you go see a movie or a play, when the audience is engaged or not engaged, and you're with them. If people are laughing or crying, you're with them. You just don't get that same energy when you're by yourself. And economic, we saw this at the Gates Foundation, which is right in the center of Seattle, which is very expensive. And so if you were making more money, you could afford to live closer. If you didn't have as much money, if you were the assistants or the coordinators, you live 2 hours away. And so, sure, it's easy for a leader to say, I want people in the office every day because it's a 10-minute commute for them. It's really different when it's a 2-hour commute. And when you were operating during COVID, pandemic lockdowns for 2 years, effectively, it becomes increasingly more difficult to convince someone, even though it's a 10-minute commute for me, you need to come in 2 hours a day. And so I think we have all these things clashing up against, why do we actually want people in the office?
Yeah. Well, and that's part of why I wanted us to talk about it, because, you see certain corporations, they are definitely drawing the line in the sand. You have to be in the office. You have to be here 5 days a week. And you have a lot of people pushing back on that because, to your point, like you just described Toronto, which is where I reside, like if you're fortunate enough to live in the city, that's all great and fine. But if you're outside the city, and especially in the last 2 years with the amount of immigration we've had come in, like we just don't have the infrastructure from, getting people to and from. And so it's easy to have, a 26-mile or kilometer distance that takes 2 hours to happen. And that takes a toll on people. And so, the productivity decreases, the satisfaction starts to decrease. That I hear what you're saying on the energy. I'm a big energy person. So it is harder to create that when you're working remotely.
I agree. I would say it's almost impossible. I'm taking a little bit of an extreme view here, but I don't believe, and working at the foundation for the years during the pandemic, first of all, I don't know that people were happier or more joyful. It was the times as well, obviously. I think there's an element that we don't talk about enough at work, which is joy. We can be comfortable. It can be convenient. It can be easier, and it can be more productive to work from home. All of those things are true. I don't think it is joyful. I think joyful comes when you have those moments with other people where something unlocks, where you solve a problem, where you make a connection, and you say, oh, wait, yes, this is it. And this is exciting, and this is fun. And trying to create those sort of bonding, joyful, spontaneous moments on a big 30-person Teams call or Zoom call where everyone's going around and raising their hand, it's just not quite the same. So I'm not advocating for full-time at work, full-time remote. The situation is different for different organizations, different roles, different people. What I do think the source of a lot of frustration is when organizations aren't clear on what they want and their clarity is not in sync with their values or what their stated values are. It is the biggest source of frustration. You see it in engagement scores. You just don't, it's the root of frustration and anxiety is if you say you're a people-centered company that's all about innovation and all about new ideas, and that you shut down new ideas, or you have to go through a gauntlet of things to pass through to be able to speak at a meeting. That's what's frustrating for people.
Sure.
If you tell them, like when I was working in investment banking, going in, you're going to work a lot of hours. Nobody cares about you. And, but what you get in return is you get this on your resume, you'll make more money than your peers. You'll be here for 2 years or 3 years, and then you'll go to another company. We don't expect you to stay. Now I know what I'm going into, whether I like the fact that I'm sitting here on a Saturday and my partner hasn't called me. It's 10 p.m. because he's sitting on his, beach in the Hamptons. I don't like that, but I'm not mad because I knew that's what I signed up for. The frustration is like with hybrid or remote work. If you say certain things, but then you create policies or the unconscious behaviors that deny that, that is worse, I think, than just being bold and clear. I expect you in the office 4 days a week. That's it. That's your choice now, right? That, yes, I get it, I will, or I don't want to. It's the in-between that is really frustrating for people.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you bring up. And I want to go back to something you said there when you were talking about it may not be the same rules for everybody and how to manage that from an HR perspective, because I do agree with you. I think if you have R&D or you're innovating a new product, absolutely, totally get that. If your role is something that doesn't require that, what are the risks? What are the rewards of varying the rules based on the position that somebody might be in, or based on the type of business it might be?
Yeah, it's a great question. When we were looking at some of our employee engagement scores, it was interesting to see during this forced work from home, not the policy of hybrid, as we were coming out of that and moving into the early days of hybrid, the younger employees, newer employees, and people who had worked in headquarters and then had gone remote, their scores went way down on things like community, on engagement, on mentorship, on career advancement, because they felt isolated, that they weren't part of the hallway conversation, the water cooler. Oh, I bumped into the president. We had coffee together. That's not going to happen. But it was also feeling like our meetings now are transactional. You get on, if all your meetings are remote, that means all your meetings are online. That means they've been set up to conduct some business. Sometimes there's a, what's your favorite movie, like icebreaker in the beginning, but it doesn't.
Then to the transaction.
Yeah, let's move to the transaction. What's the product status? What's that person saying? So there isn't that type of, how do I get noticed? And how does someone mentor me or take an interest in me in that circumstance? It also meant we measured circles of influence through our Microsoft tools, got smaller and smaller, because again, you were missing out on that kind of interaction, seeing people, having a lunch with them, coffee. So I do think that there are some roles in companies where remote works great. It gives you a bigger talent pool. It gives you a lot of compliance problems that you've got to have the infrastructure for, is you want to be able to operate in multiple states or multiple countries. There's a lot to work through. So don't lose sight of the investment companies that you have to make in order to permit that. But it gives you a much bigger talent pool, and it can cut down on a lot of expenses, which is all good. And you might decide like, okay, we're going to work remotely, but 4 times a year, we're all going to get together and have a week together, 3 days together, where we get some of the stuff that I've been talking about. I think in most hybrid organizations, they're trying to find that balance between, I do think we've swung the pendulum and seen some of the big tech companies go back to or just big companies, 4 days a week, five. Amazon is 5, which I think is an overreaction that's going to swing back a little bit because, again, sooner or later, it's the buyers and sellers, right? It's the buyer of talent, it's the seller of talent. Individuals will say, no, thank you. And once you start creating exceptions, because they're like, oh, well, this is a really special person, we'll let them do hybrid, but everyone else, now you've got a different kind of a problem. And so I do think the pendulum swung too far. But to your point, if what you're trying to do is, brainstorm, if what you want to do is build a sense of community, if what you want to do is have some moments of like new hire onboarding and connection and community, you can now be much more focused on that outcome and create situations like with your team. You can say, every time we hire a new employee, everybody has to be in the office for their first 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Then you go back to whatever your routine was after that, because that new employee needs to feel like they understand and know the team.
Yeah.
If you want to say, okay, we've got a really big project coming in and we're kind of losing our way, let's all get together for a day and kind of work our way through it in person and just hash it out. Those are outcomes that you want to deliver for which in person makes sense. And then there are times when you say, it's convenient, it's comfortable, it's less expensive for you, then working from home is great. Let's have both, but be much more intentional about the outcome we want.
Well, you've shared a number of things there, I think, that are really important. I mean, not every company is the same. So you really do have to look at what is your vision, mission, strategy. How does each person within that organization fit into that? Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? And I love what you just shared about there may be pivotal moments that we need to be super intentional and bring people together. Love what you just said about the onboarding, because that is one thing I hear a lot from new employees, executives included, that move into a new business and they're like, well, I haven't even met anybody yet. Like they may have virtual calls, and then we also have the dynamic of people not turning on their screens. And so there's all those mechanical things that we have to be very clear on. Being on Zoom or Teams or Google Meets, whatever, that's just like being in the office. You need to show up fully.
That's right.
Right. But I think that there are ways that you can create that environment of community connection. I have a client that they are a 4-day work week and they are 100% remote, but they ran into these challenges of the connection, the community. And so we worked on different ways. And one way the CEO manages that is monthly, she hosts lunch and learns, and it's in person. So you're invited to come in and, it's time to have that voice. They do regular town halls. So they're doing a lot of other things to keep that connection strong. But you're right. It does oftentimes you'll be missed, right? Because out of sight is out of mind often. And so even as the employee, you have to be very intentional to get in front of your boss or your boss's boss or whatever that scenario may be. So I think we're still in a wait and see, but what you just said about how some have swung so far, it's like it will flush out a little bit.
It definitely will. It's not, I don't believe it's sustainable. It might sustain for a while, especially the bigger, more powerful companies might say, but that also begins to have a perspective of talent is easily replaceable. Yeah. Like we're so big and we have 100,000 applicants a quarter. So feel free to seek excellence elsewhere. And that's okay. Sometimes a person isn't right for the organization. They're not a bad person or a bad performer. The culture match doesn't fit. But I don't ever think it is good to get complacent on talent. I don't care how big or powerful an organization you are. If you are ever in a point where you can say everybody's replaceable, that's true, but don't say that so confidently, because individual people are not. Their knowledge, what they bring, their spirit, their passion, their experience that's not replaceable one-to-one. And if you don't care about that, it's a lot of money. So the opportunity cost, to replace a professional level person, it's often 2 to 3 times their salary. By the executive, it's 10 to 12 times their salary. The opportunity, the recruiting, what you're losing, the disruption that it causes, the onboarding of the new person, all the stuff that they're going to do. We shouldn't get too easy with it. And there's a little bit of a hint of that's the way we do it, like it or lump it. It's not a great sustainable talent philosophy.
Agreed. Yeah, that's a very short-lived. And that reputation gets around as well, where then people go, oh, I don't want to go work for X brand because they don't care about their people. And I think that is one thing that has really become more obvious during COVID, was people wanted to feel like they belonged. They want to feel valued, and more so than ever. Because I mean, used to, you go in, you punch a clock, and it was what it was. But now it's no, I'm a person, I'm a human being, and I want to have that connection with the company, but also
absolutely. Yeah, and those expectations are growing, and maybe companies started it by expecting employees to be available beyond the 9 to 5.
Yes.
Started breaking the social contract of intruding on our personal lives, like over the weekends, over holidays, emails all night long. But also, as society has been changing, and we see this, there was an article earlier this year about the record number of CEO departures. Mm-hmm. And it's just become a lot, right? The expectation of a company being not just doing their mission, but good for the world, being part of like social justice and having expectations around diversity, equity, and inclusion, in addition to making me feel like I'm part of the community, making sure I have a career here, and the risks and the legality, all of it's a lot. And I think obviously we haven't talked about AI yet, but AI, hybrid, different employee expectations, it's getting to be a lot. And I think we've seen a lot of CEOs say it's too much.
Yeah.
And so like you said at the top of the call, it's a time of great disruption. Yeah. And on the other side of this, we will look back and say, oh, what a cool moment. Like that must have been so exciting to be there at the advent of the personal computer where anything was possible. Mm-hmm. But when you're going through it, it doesn't feel that. It feels very scary for a lot of people and overwhelming, tiring. And that's why we see a lot of anxiety, burned out, stress, and people just dropping out of the workforce.
Most definitely. And you talked about CEO departures, but I also see a lot of women leaving.
Oh, yes.
Making that change. And so let's talk about that, because the work you're doing at BRYTR is more about, tapping into the mental health aspect of it, the nutritional aspect of it. So maybe walk us through some of the things that you're doing there to help navigate some of this.
Yeah, well, it was as we were talking in our pre-call, just before we started this, we were talking about the food health. You're in Canada, I'm in the United States. There's different rules around what's considered food, and it's very hard, even if you're intentional and you have the money, to figure out how to eat healthy, organic, clean food for you and your family. And even things like the difference between shredded cheese and block cheese, right? Shredded cheese is easier, it's more convenient, has so much more microplastics in there than getting the block cheese and doing it yourself. But it's more time and more effort and more of a mess. And so there's that balance of convenience cost. Apples are commodities. You can't differentiate, oh, this is a craft apple, it's 10 times better than, a J&J apple. So the most, profitable thing in a grocery store is a candy bar, from cost to sales. And so the system is designed for foods that are not the healthiest for us. Mm-hmm. And it's done a number on our body. We all know that. And we certainly know that in the United States. We can see it, whether it's weight or diabetes, heart issues. What we haven't spent as much time on is how the impact, particularly on the gut microbiome, has on mental health, mm-hmm. Anxiety, stress, and burnout. And so, this ideas food is medicine, nutritional psychiatry is growing very quickly. but still a bit of a nascent field. But we've just taking a step back and thinking, have you ever gotten an email on a Friday that just tears you apart and you're just all worked up about it? But there are times when you've gotten a like email on Monday and you're like, okay, it's annoying, but I will take care of it. You are burned out by Friday. You are tired and you haven't slept maybe great, or you haven't eaten properly. You are burned out, and it changes our behavior. It changes our emotional response. We go sometimes into threat mode of like the fight, flight, or freeze, or we lash out, or we're just exhausted. After hopefully a restful, rejuvenated weekend where we're sort of back on track, we're better able to handle it on Monday. I think that being tired and burnt out and stressed and not having been able to have proper nutrition and rest and movement, it can lead us to becoming unkind. It can lead us to becoming not who we think we are or who we aspire to be. And so it takes a psychological effect on us as individuals. So that's why it's, I think, really important. I'm really excited about this product that will come out later this year called Daily Launchpad. But bigger than that is even recognizing that separating out work, how I am at work, with my mental health, with my nutritional choices, with my ability to move and rest, those are not all separate things. We need to sort of bring them into sort of like a bigger picture of how am I as a full, whole person? Health, rest, movement, work, family, connection, spirituality, et cetera. Thinking about that more holistically and not trying to isolate, this is who I need to be at work so I can be this at home.
Yeah.
It's not going to get us to where we need to go.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And I hear that often from individuals where they'll say, oh, do you mean how I am at work or how I am at home? And it's like, right. Well, wherever you go, there you are. So right. who are you being?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think what you were just talking about there, Sonia, is so important with respect to what are you feeding? And that is food, but it's also the mental, the spiritual, the intellectual. What are you feeding your soul with? Because all of that makes a difference, right? In how we show up. And you'll often see where we're so busy and consumed, we grab, right? Like you were talking about the candy bar being most profitable, right? Because you're grabbing, I just need something quick just to get me through until dinner time or whatever. But that has a lasting impact because there is no nutrient in that.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So it's making sure you're consciously feeding your total being.
It's so important. And I know there are people who will say, because they say to me all the time, I can't do meditation. I'm like, well, you can, but that's okay. You don't want to do meditation. You think it's this like thing that takes years. So don't do meditation. Do box breathing once a day, like in the most stressed out moment when you're in the bathroom. Do 3 box breaths, 4, 4, 4, 4. That's all. Deeply. That alone will change a lot of things in your psychology, in your makeup, in your brain. You will rest for the 20 seconds that it takes you to do that.
Yeah,
and those are
impact.
Huge impact. Small things, big impact.
Yeah, totally agree. Again, we were talking about the mastermind group that I lead. I brought somebody in January to do breath work with them.
Oh, great.
Because they're all very senior executives, and you can see people hold their breath, right? Because they're just trying to get through to the next thing. So I brought this wonderful, wonderful woman in, and she did breath work with them, and they were all like, oh my gosh, right? And it's just becoming conscious of it and what you need, because your breath is your life force, keeping you moving, keeping you thinking. But all of these things, it can sometimes sound overwhelming, but important for you as a person, for your vitality. So I'm going to flip gears just a little bit because I am watching our time.
Oh, yes.
So when you think about the future of work, what is the impact, good, bad, and different, with AI? And, it's a hot topic because everybody's either excited or worried. So what's your take from a human resource professional and with your experiences?
Well, I think it is a paradigm shifting transformation. There, just like I keep talking about the personal computer or the smartphone, or go back to the industrial revolution or the printing press. Like, it is a moment that there's going to be a before and an after. We're right in it right now. I also think that short term, the claims that it will, transform work in the next year or two, it won't. We had there's recently came out a Nobel Prize winner 2025 came out and said AI has not created the productivity boom that many anticipated. We're halfway through this year. It hasn't happened. It's still in the training phase. I mean, in some places, HR writing job descriptions, writing code. There's some cool things happening with medical diagnoses. Like, there's a lot of things happening that we can see the potential, but actual productivity is focused on how do I automate tasks or not do those tasks to the same level. However, that's been replaced with training the models, checking the models, revising the models. So it's not like that time is being used for something else yet. But the biggest impact, I think, is that it's not about automation. It's acceleration. We don't once we've trained our models, and once we can have it do things on our behalf, not just I'm your boss, and like I say, it's like a smart intern. But what happens when it becomes truly an employee, where it's actually doing work and the checking of it isn't as needed? And then you're really just sort of like managing another employee. What are we replacing that time with? Are we going off on vacation, or are we saying what's been missing for the past 30, I'll say 30, 100 years, but 30 years, human connection, proactive reach out, like I'll use HR as an example. If we could have an AI know, because it's looking at people's calendars and requests, hey, you're going on parental leave in 3 months. Here's the information that you need to know. I can answer basic questions. That doesn't mean the human being isn't there. The benefits analyst can then call them, a month ahead, and it be proactive of like, what an exciting time for you. I'm sure it's a little bit scary. What can I do to make this an easier process? We don't have time to do that today. We will have time to do that tomorrow. So AI is changing tasks, but trust, creativity, judgment, connection, that remains essentially human.
Yeah.
And we've been having engagement studies as long as I've been working and longer that say, managers, be better.
Yeah.
That's why I'm leaving the organization.
Yeah.
This is the last thing I'll say, and I'll turn it back to you. But I was fascinated. I saw this study that was done about 6 months ago, asking people, like, do you want an AI manager? And they were like, oh, that's weird. No. And they're like, okay, but what if this manager was always present, never judgmental, has the answers for you, will never yell at you, it's programmed to treat everybody the same, right? It doesn't have any biases towards, oh, you play pickleball, so do I, and you like football, I don't like football. Like, well, now how do you feel?
Yeah.
They're like, well, that sounds pretty good, actually. The thing is, human beings can be great managers. We've all had great managers. Many are not good managers, not out of ill intent, but because they don't want to put in the time. They don't like the conflict. They have internal biases. We've known this for 30 years. Let's use this as an opportunity to say, let's get better, more human leadership, pay more attention, be more present, pay attention to people, see them for what they bring, not what you want them to be. These are things that people have been asking for decades.
Yeah.
We might now have the time and opportunity to do it, and we should.
Yeah. Well, I think you hit on a very important point there about when you have space, that also enables more relational connection and inspiration, getting to know people as people instead of just getting on the autopilot wheel and run, which is what we've been doing for so long. And when you have space, like I know for myself, when I have time to think, I'm so much more thoughtful and innovative. And I think that that those are a lot of the positive benefits of AI, right? And so instead of being fearful of that, it's embracing that. How do I use it to support me to be more productive? So I think we still have a lot of learnings there, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
I hope so. I mean, I don't want to downplay the dangers, the risks of, AI transforming our economies and a lot of people losing their jobs and not having another job to go to. It's a real thing. Or that the wealth created by AI, just like with personal computing, goes into the hands of a few,
Yeah.
when it's our tax dollars that is actually funding a lot of the research. At some point, we need to make sure that the wealth generated by AI does not land in the hands of a few billionaires, but it is brought back into the entire economy.
Agreed.
I also think that this is a moment, whether someone thinks they're tech savvy or not, there's a response to paradigm shifting moments. There's a fight it, go to Congress, protest it, yell at people. There's a stick your head in the sand, like it's just a wave, it'll wash over and it'll go back to normal. Or 3, accept it, embrace it. The first 2 are losing propositions. You're going to waste your time and energy. AI is not going anywhere. And B, this is not a thing that will pass like Betamax. Like it is here to stay. It already is deeply embedded in our lives, and it's going to become even more so. So ChatGPT is alone. Just get it. It's a free version. Just play with it. Ask it things. You don't have to do anything more elaborate than that. We did a 1-year experiment, like no threat in my HR team. I said, everyone was scared. You want my job? I'm like, no jobs are being taken away. For 1 year, just play with it. We had 2 people that raised their hand, lunch and learn, celebrating wins. Like somebody took a task that would take him 3 weeks. He figured out how to do it in 4 hours with AI. And this is what he was working on now. So it felt like fun, experimental. Failure is not on the table. How can you fail? You're just learning. And I think that's the way that you help employees feel more included. But I don't think that this productivity boom where we'll see a massive transformation in the workforce in the next 12 months, I don't think that's going to happen. I do think some companies are moving faster and looking at things like I think it was, I don't remember the name of the company, but anyway, they said managers have to justify hiring a human employee as opposed to using AI. They're there. I think that's too much, right? But yeah, some are there, most are not. Nobody's behind because nobody's got this figured out.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Very true. And part of it, to your point, I think is just the experimentation, right? Like try it. And it's not about fearing it, but it's like, how to use it for good, not for bad. And as we all know, I mean, there are those that will use it for ill intent, and let's minimize that and try to use it for really good. And
yeah,
my hopes would be that it creates a better whole life for individuals.
Yeah. I hope so. And right now, all of us have a role to play in that.
Yes. 100%.
If we don't do anything, then a year or 2 from now, and it's stuck in the hands of 3 billionaires, it's going to be a lot harder to change. So be a part of it now. Let's make it our own. I don't care if you're 8 years old or 80 years old. Like we can shape this future through our acknowledgement, through our education, through our experimentation, through voting, through policies. Just let's make sure that we can do something now that we might not be able to do in 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, well said. That made me think of another conversation I had earlier.
Okay, it's a cool conversation.
We could talk for hours here, Sonia, but I do have to wrap us up, unfortunately.
Yes,
so because this is like so many great nuggets to take from this conversation today, how can people find you, reach you?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Best way right now is LinkedIn. Okay. LinkedIn, Sonia Vora. I would love to hear from folks and continue this conversation, because I guess what I'll sort of say in parting is, and the whole topic that we've been talking about in our different areas is, yes, the rules of work are being rewritten, whether it's AI, where we work, how we work, when we work. Right now, we are building a future. We don't know what it looks like. It's very cool. It's very exciting. It's very transformative. It's very scary. So whether it's rethinking how we lead, harnessing AI, redefining flexibility, this is the moment of maximum possibility. Be a part of it. Be a part of the conversation in small ways, big ways. But now's the moment. And at some point, that window will close into the hands of a few people. Let's make sure it doesn't. And now is the time to do that.
Well said. Really well said. Wow. Thank you so much. Our time, it went so fast.
So fast. Well, you're so wonderful to talk to. You clearly are plugged into a lot of very important conversations, and you are doing what we're talking about. Others hopefully plugging into is just be a part of the conversation, shape the future. Invite people in. So thank you, Vicki.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I'm grateful to have you on the show today, and thank you. And we'll have to have you back on because clearly we have a lot more to talk about. And I want to thank our audience. Thank you so much for chiming in today. Leave us a review. Let us know how we did. Let us know if there's other conversations you want to be part of. We'd love to hear that. We love ideas, or if there's an incredible woman you go, oh, we want to hear her story. Let me know that. We love bringing great guests to the show, and make sure you go on and visit the Women in Leadership Talk website, Women in Leadership Empowered website, and take our free leadership quiz. It'll give you some insight as to how you're showing up in the world, and that's important. You want to know, are you showing up the way you want to show up? So be sure to go on and have a look at that. So thank you everyone for being here, and we will see you at the next Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for WIL Talk, sponsored by Women in Leadership Empowered. To learn more about our programs, please visit www.willempowered.com. We look forward to seeing you in our community.